Please welcome Skift Senior Research Analyst, Seth Borko.
Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome. Well, thank you so much for joining us both here in New York and, of course, online if you're joining us digitally. We're really excited to be here today to be given our Megatrends and our Skift Research Global Outlook. So let's jump into it. What does Skift Research think the theme of this year might be from an economic point of view? Well, I picked no rest for the weary because it was so hard being in the travel industry in 2020 and 2021. We all remember that. We all lived through that. And so the reality is we're not going to get to just coast next year. We've got back to recovery, but now there's still a lot of hard work ahead of us. And why do I say that? Because there's a lot of kind of clouds out there that are cause for concern. Things like inflation, the possibility of recession, that ongoing trade war conversation, the real shooting war that's happening in Ukraine right now. These are all causes for concern. And well, I don't want to start off just too heavy on this afternoon. I know we're just getting started, but there's some bad news that we need to be really clear-eyed about and really upfront about. According to a lot of economists, the probability of a recession in the coming year is high and rising, and we should be honest with ourselves about that economic outlook. We should also be honest with ourselves about what inflation could mean. It's coming down, it's getting better, but nonetheless, our surveys show that nearly 70% of travelers, when they were faced with higher prices, they changed their travel plans. They traveled for less time, they downgraded to a cheaper option, and of course, if inflation makes, say, your food or your fuel more expensive, it leaves less room in your wallet for travel. So let's talk about our actual growth outlook. This is percentage growth for 2023 by all of the main industries that we cover. And we're forecasting some pretty good numbers, actually. 60% growth in cruise as they really come back from the pandemic. And even short-term rentals, which has been so high-flying for so long, we think they can continue to grow at 10%. And just for your reference, this is all published online, but for your reference, this is what those translate to in actual dollar figures, our market estimates for 2023 for these sectors. So I maybe kind of gave you a little bit of whipsaw there, a little whiplash, right? Like I came off and I was maybe a little, here's the bad news, we need to be honest, but then I forecasted, or we, Skift Research, forecasted double-digit growth for most travel sectors. So how do I square that circle? How do we remain optimistic about the travel industry into 2023? Well, there are two main reasons why. The first is that travel is still under-indexed relative to the broader economy, and the second is the reopening of Asia that we expect to happen this year. So I'm going to talk about both of these ideas. We'll start with the economic one. I think this is a really important point about layoffs. When we think about these economic storm clouds, what comes to mind more often than not is all these tech layoffs. I think I just got a push notification. I think it was Bed Bath & Beyond. We have to remember that these sectors, tech or home goods or Peloton machines, they were booming during the pandemic. They saw job headcount grow during the pandemic. That didn't happen in the travel industry, where tech headcount is up 60%, travel headcount is down and still smaller than it was before the pandemic. So in a certain sense, we've kind of already taken our lumps, already experienced the pain that the other sectors are now going through today. And that grabs headlines, but hopefully we have a little bit of insulation. And then I think this also drives this point home. This might be, I think, the most important slide I have in my talk this morning about how we still have upside relative to the broad economy. So let me talk you through how to read this chart. So those dark blue lines, that's a GDP, an economic forecast, where the IMF expects GDP to be in 2023 relative to 2019. So take North America, 22% higher than it was in 2019. Those light blue lines, that's our Skift Travel Health Index. It's a holistic score that we do at Skift Research to measure the strength of the travel industry. It includes tourism, it includes flows, it includes hotels, car rentals. And so in the long run, travel should be linked with economic activity, right? They should be kind of even with each other. We've been so focused on getting that light blue bar back to 100, and we succeeded, that we've kind of forgotten all these other sectors have moved ahead of us. And so there's still a huge amount of catch-up left in the travel industry. We're kind of moving past the pure revenge travel phase, but even if there was a slowdown, that 122 number, we're at 98, so to speak. There's a lot of percentage points of upside growth available for us in the travel industry. And you don't need to take my word for it. You can ask around, right? I'm not the only one who's looking at Wall Street Journal headlines about the economy. These are major CEOs of pretty much every major, huge travel industries, companies, and they have a lot of real-world data, a lot of real-world customer experience. And when they're asked about the outlook, they remain very positive for the year to come. They continue to see really strong demand, both pent-up demand, but also a secular change in how travel is experienced. So that's my first point. Travel's still under-indexed. That's why we're still optimistic. The second point is about the reopening of Asia. I kind of think about it a little bit like you have your 8 a.m., your morning coffee, and then you get a little tired, and then you need that little afternoon pick-me-up. If we think about like the broader economic cycle, Asia is kind of giving us that little pick-me-up just when we need it most. They're coming in to kind of maybe save the day a little bit. We can forget how important and how big Asia is to global travel. These are the top airline routes in the world, 2019 versus 2022. The ones highlighted in blue are in Asia, 9 out of the top 10 in 2019. But then 2022, only 1 out of the top 10. And by the way, if you look at those seats, the capacity numbers, the largest in 2022, that's Cairo to Jeddah, is still smaller than the bottom of the top 10 in 2019, right? And so there's a huge amount of activity, travel activity in Asia that used to take place that is yet to return and that will come back and boost travel on a global scale. Asia's reopening is happening. It is underway as we speak, but progress is slow. So again, I'm measuring airline seat capacity here, and we're looking at international inbound flights. So inbound interest from abroad. London, New York, Tokyo, Shanghai, kind of representative of the different stages of the reopening. Tokyo, Japan announced its reopening in fall of last year, and you can see already a pretty immediate boost, and now we're kind of back to where we were in spring of summer of 2021 in New York, so like maybe 18 months kind of behind us. China has yet to return, but we've all seen the headlines, and we know that the reopening of China is coming, and it's going to really matter. Because China was the largest outbound travel market in the world in 2019, $255 billion in expenditures in 2019. That's a huge hole missing in the travel economy that has yet to be replaced. I mean, 100 billion more than the second largest exporter of tourism in 2019. And so the return of China, which is going to start to happen this year and into 2024 and into 25, is going to be a huge boost in terms of growth to our industry. And so I do want to talk a little bit about this idea of redistribution. So Asia's return is set to power the growth of travel, but it's also set to, in a sense, redistribute the flow of travel, right? So I think a lot, there's kind of a desynchronization in global growth that's happening right now. Europe and America had all that revenge travel, all that revenge travel in Europe and America in the last few years, and now it's going to maybe normalize a little bit. But the revenge travel phase in Asia hasn't even hit us yet. It's about to come. And so we're going to see a desynchronization of what's happening in Europe versus Asia. We're also going to see, with the lifting of zero COVID, do Chinese travelers even want to go to the same destinations that they used to visit before the pandemic? The political situation has changed a lot since then. Maybe they're going to want to go to different destinations. And so even as the opening of Asia enables growth, it also sets the stage for a redistribution of where and how citizens travel across the globe. And that's going to kind of take us into our first big megatrend theme, word of the afternoon, which is this idea of redistributed travel. And we've put a bunch of different megatrends around it, each of which is their own story, article, which you can access online and which speaks to this broader topic. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. You can read them online, but I do want to talk about a couple and how they affect the redistribution of travel. So we have that China reopening. There's also a really interesting story about what's happening in India and the reopening of India and the change in demographics there. We're going to actually talk about that at the end of the session today, but the growth of India is really set to reorder Asian travel. And the question is, are they going to want to go to different places? Probably. And so there are going to be different flows coming out of India. We also have this idea of border bottlenecks. So, if you are coming from an emerging country, India, Mexico, Colombia, and you want to visit the United States, the wait for a visa can be upwards of 400 days. That's insane. It's ridiculous. And you can better believe that those travelers are not going to wait a full year just to visit New York. They're going to go somewhere else, and they might find they like it better. Who knows? And by the way, these things reciprocate, tit for tat. There's now a lot of things happening about China's inbound visa regime, whether they'll allow visitors in as well. And so these border bottlenecks force a redistribution of travel and where travelers can and will access. I want to shift pace a little bit and talk about this trend of the anywhere traveler, because this is going to bring us back to New York and Europe. The anywhere traveler is a term that we've kind of coined in this megatrend. It's sort of a millennial or a Gen Z traveler in US or Europe. They're probably, millennials, everyone seems to think millennials are like the young kid, the intern in the office. They're not. They're in their 30s. They're hitting peak purchasing power. They're starting families. Millennial purchasing power is growing. Boomer purchasing power is shrinking. Now, that's not to say don't forget about them, but just the point is these millennials are coming into their own. And especially in the West, they kind of have the privilege to travel almost anywhere they want in the world. And if you can go anywhere, you don't really want to go just anywhere, right? You want to go somewhere distinctive and somewhere unique and somewhere you can kind of maybe brag about your friends about a little bit to it. Hey, have you heard about this new travel destination? How cool is this? And that's all being enabled by the future of work, by digital nomad as this new aspirational type of travel. And the final redistributed megatrend I'll talk about a little bit today is this idea of climate impact. We call climate impact moves from marketing to operations. There's been a lot said about climate change, but I think if we're really being honest with ourselves, much of it has been marketing copy. But a lot of companies are now committing to science-based targets, and that means moving from just marketing or easy things, low-hanging fruit, to real operational shifts, which are going to be hard and difficult and expensive. And the reality is certain types of travel are less sustainable than others. And so in a world where we start to put more of a price on climate and where consumers demand more climate sustainability, we might see different destinations rise, become in vogue, become more or less affordable or accessible. And so the push for more sustainability may also wind up redistributing flows of travelers across the world. So I'll just close on this slide and just recap. I just talked about our redistributed themes. We're going to hear our speakers and my colleagues come on stage to talk about all these big ideas as well, the redistributed, blended, and polarized. Just to recap, we remain at Skift Research cautiously optimistic for the coming year. We still see the opportunity for double-digit growth in the travel industry, even as economic clouds gather. We believe that because, one, travel remains significantly under-indexed relative to the broader economy. So even if the broader economy slows, there's upside left in travel. And two, we believe that because the reopening of Asia is really going to power a second wave of travel throughout the global economy, and that will benefit particularly global brands that have exposure to both Europe and Asia. That reopening and growth sets the stage for many of our megatrends, including the redistribution of travel and the different places and new kinds and modes of travel out there. So if you liked our trends, I got to give a plug for my division for Skift Research. Please consider checking us out. I hope you've learned something, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.